Hello, what's up, people? What's up? Movement transaction system. Where's the transaction part? The transaction part is that it is a, hold on, let me turn on air conditioning. The transaction part is that it's a puzzle game that has user movement elements, right? Like it responds to keystrokes when you decide to move, but it also has timed elements, and the response to any particular move can be pretty complicated. And so, and the timings at which things happen are complicated. So when you say, I want to walk into the next square, your character doesn't move into that square for purposes of collision detection until sometime later, right? And you put all these ingredients together, and you get a system where if you're not careful about it, it's very easy to like spam things in such a way that operations would happen that are kind of invalid in terms of what you're supposed to be able to do for puzzle solving, you know? You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to explain. Without going into very specific examples. But yeah. There were technical difficulties at Handmade Conference with recording it or with being able to give the talk. They're not live streaming it, right? I didn't think that was the thing. Oh, there is a live stream. Oh, well, why am I streaming during Mike Acton's talk? That doesn't make any sense. I thought they said they weren't going to live stream. That's why I streamed today. Am I going to create a syntax highlighter extension for Visual Studio? I will not ever do that. If somebody else wanted to do that, that's fine. But my goal is to get off Visual Studio as quickly as possible. So as soon as another debugger is usable, I will use that other debugger. because this one's just terrible, dude. I don't know. Should I shut off the stream so that people could go watch Mike Acton's talk, or do I just go? I don't like Visual Studio. No. Visual Studio was pretty good in 1998, maybe to 2002, and it's just been going downhill ever since then. It doesn't ever get better. It just gets worse every release. Hello, everyone in Seattle. Okay, there's a link in chat to Abner's Twitch channel, which I guess is where they're streaming Handmade Con, or Handmade Seattle, whatever it's officially called. Would I still be the kind of programmer today if I had not switched from physics major to CS? You're asking this because you're a physics student who wants to become a programmer. You know, counterfactuals like that are very hard to answer. Like, I already was super into programming before I officially did that in college. I mean, would I have learned as many things in the same way? I don't know. Probably not exactly. Probably not from classes. But then most of my best education came from outside classes anyway. So I don't know. But I mean, do you like physics more, or do you like computers more? I think that's the answer. Yeah, the difference is there are people working on debuggers. There are at least 2 different debuggers in development that I should be able to switch to before too long. So that's good. It lost the ability to inspect variables 50% of the time. Yeah. Oh, when I try to use Visual Studio on my laptop now, I don't know what happened, but like input events aren't even processed correctly without weird lag now. So I'll like accidentally undock one of the windows, and then like I try to redock it and it doesn't work right. Like it's all terrible. Was making the in-game consoles for Witness, the current engine, etc. good dry runs for a future system console. I mean, sure, but it's just, that's a super easy thing to do compared to a game. Like the in-game console for Witness or this game, I mean, I did it in a day or whatever, right? I mean, we probably enhanced it a little bit after that, but it's just not a significantly complex program, honestly. Has there been any feedback from the beta? The beta is not exactly open in that way. The people who we gave the compiler to so far are not like using it for programming. I can't say what it's about. But you know, as the year goes on, we will widen that circle of who has the compiler. Yeah. Well, let's start doing some programming and see what happens. So right now, so off stream, actually some weeks ago, I refactored the movement in this game to use this new transaction system for reasons that I've explained, because for a puzzle game, it's important that moves be what you think they're going to be and that the rules of the game are adhered to, and that you can't do like weird race conditions to break those rules, because then they're not really puzzles anymore, right? But that's not so easy to implement when you've got all the wacky kinds of rules going on like we have in this game. And so this game has gone through several different movement systems. I've probably rewritten it 4 times. This is probably rewrite number 5. I'm hoping it's the last one. I haven't seen anything yet that'll convince me that this system won't work. And so we're going to move ahead and keep debugging it. So right now, a number of the levels test successfully. I don't remember exactly how many because it's been a while, but I wanted to go through and start fixing the remaining problems and try to get to 100% levels passing tests, which doesn't mean that all bugs will be out. There's like weird bugs right now about characters turning the wrong way when you run around and stuff. But if we can at least get to the point where tests pass, then maybe I could think about checking it in. And the thing is, while the game code on this computer is up in the air like this, I don't really want to work on the compiler, because destabilizing the game and destabilizing the compiler at the same time is a really bad recipe. Because then if you do something in the compiler that breaks the game, you won't notice it because the game's already broken, right? And that's one reason why I haven't done any compiler streams from home lately, is just because I've had this code from the game like not able to be checked in yet, and yeah. But because it's a big task, and I've had other big tasks that I'm also juggling, it hasn't gotten done. So I want to make progress toward getting this done. We'll check it in, and that'll be really nice. One, it'll free up this computer to do compiler stuff. But two, this system has been one of the major question marks in terms of this game getting done, right? It's like, okay, for it to be very robust and very tight, this system has to do a very good job. And what is that? Are we going to be able to figure out what that is? And that's been a question for at least 2 years, probably more. So it'll be a relief to answer that question in the affirmative. If for some reason this movement system doesn't actually work, like globally, then at least hopefully we'll be closer to the answer. Right? If we're not, if this doesn't work for some reason that I'm just like, I don't know what to do, then maybe we have to cancel everything and then I go get a physics degree. We'll see. Will the new movement system support non-tile-based movement? No. No, this is a very strictly tile-based game. You said non-turn-based also, though. There are timed elements in the game that take their own turns, essentially. Use Git with branches. Yeah, no. Like the whole thing, you can branch on most source control systems. It's just now you're juggling even more things in your head, and there's a possibility of making mistakes, and it just complicates. So I was explaining this to someone last night. Like, one of the biggest downfalls of programmers, and one of the reasons why Silicon Valley programmers are so unproductive, is because people get so interested in like setting up their tools and making sure their tools are nice and spending time configuring their tools and using their tools, right? And setting up their environment, that it sort of becomes like work theater, where you're doing all these things that signify work, but you're not actually doing work, right? And so one of the things in my personality, one of the changes that I made to become more effective, is I decided to call bullshit on as much of that as possible. This is why I don't change Windows configurations when Windows is doing something wrong, because it's like, look, it's just going to reset it later. It's going to be more of a time vampire, right? So what I try to do is I try to maximize the percentage of the time that I'm typing on the keyboard that actually is getting actual work done, right? Not doing work theater, not doing things that signify work around the thing. And so like having a bunch of branches checked out and juggling around between them or whatever, there are some work scenarios where that would be necessary probably. Most people are not in those scenarios in the real world. And so if they just simplified the number of things they had to think about and focused, they would get more done. But people don't do that for some reason. All right, we're going to program. We're going to program. Time vampires are a real thing, man. Okay. So the particular problem that I'm facing now, there's a big, messy solution that has to happen later, and there's simpler solutions that could happen now. So basically, let me run this. Well, I'll run the level in the debugger again. So this is a level where there's some stuff. there's blocks, and they get teleported by like purple beam when you set them in motion. And when one of these blocks teleports, we hit an assertion. And the assertion is that the thing doesn't end up on integer coordinates, right? So let me just run the test thing. Okay, it actually wasn't when it teleported. It was later, interestingly. Where? Oh, it's when that other block teleported. Anyway, so this thing is saying, hey, give me the index on the collision grid of the level of where this object is, so we can use that. And the thing is, this is returning -1, that it's out of bounds. It shouldn't be possible for it to be out of bounds. So I looked into this last night, and it's like, well, hey, we're at like a non-integer position. It's almost 2,7, but not quite. It's 2,6.974. And the problem with that is this thing here where we say wrap, this is a wrapping level, right? So when we wrap the coordinates around the level, well, this isn't quite 7, so it doesn't wrap. Yeah. So it's so this doesn't become 0 because it's not quite high enough. But then when we do position to index, it says, oh, this rounds to 7, and that's just off the grid, right? Because we only have integer grid indices from 0 to 6. So that's a problem. Now the thing is, this is a gameplay position. What this function is doing is it's scanning through the level to see what is affected by one of those energy beams, right? Now the problem is, this shouldn't ever be visiting non-integer positions, right? But it is. So this pause input parameter is 6.974. So you have to figure out why that's happening and make it not happen. Now, all that said, why are there frickin' floating point positions for all these things if they could only be integers? And the answer is because all these decisions weren't necessarily made that clearly when the game was originally written. And so, and the way you usually do entities is, hey, you have a floating point position, right? Well, if this movement system works out, that will have been a little bit of a mistake. And so we probably will want to go through the entire program and change all of those, which is going to be pretty frickin' painful, honestly. I don't want to do that now because, of course, we're already doing a pretty frickin' painful thing, which is to change the movement system over, right? So we're doing this in pieces where we're going to keep these as float vector 3s. We're just going to fix the problem. And then later on, we'll make them integer vector 3s, which we have a type for and some basic operators for and stuff. And hopefully that'll make things cleaner and will make problems like this easier to understand. So the goal right now is to figure out why this is happening. What do I think of lines of code as a measure of productivity? It is not a very good measure of productivity at all, no. In fact, more lines of code is bad, all other things being equal. So why would that be a measure of productivity? Why would creating a bad thing be a measure of productivity? Now, if you happen to know all the lines of code are good, then maybe, but do you really trust your own judgment about that? Okay, so what is happening? So we're calling light scan with this pause that is 6.97. It probably means the position of the actual entity is 6.97, but maybe not. So so this is source. source is an entity. And let's check. Yeah, this is so promised light is the name of this beam entity. So, okay. So this thing is at, yep, so his actual position coordinate is at 6.97. Now, hopefully, there are not very many places where that could happen. We could do a search really fast. I'm a little bit scared by how many results are going to come back on the search, but we'll give it a try. And all right. Not there, so come on. And we'll say dot position equals. Okay, so a lot of these are not general entity position settings. Oh wait, this is even, okay. We don't want regex syntax. Okay, so it's not that many, but more than I would like. Some of these are going to be different data structures that also have something called position. A lot of these are tweaking the camera for some reason. Okay. Well, the most likely thing that happened was a teleport. So we can start by going here. This is our move transaction file, which is our new system for doing this stuff. And it's been a while, but okay, physically moved, do physical moves. No, that's gameplay effects. Update physical position. Okay, so update physical position is our core thing that is supposed to be the authoritative thing that sets entity positions. Yeah. Now, other people may be setting positions in ways that are bad, but we can check that later if our assertion keeps going off. But here we want to edit this function and do some things. So I'm just going to make this function, right? And that's going to say the following. We're just going to say sanity position.x, y, z, right? And sanity is going to be f2 is cast float, cast int f, assert f2 is f, right? So hopefully that's the right sanity check. So we're just doing that to the x, y, and z coordinates. Now this is extra annoying because this whole, I don't remember what we pass in as position when things go into your inventory. But they probably should be integer. I just don't want to think about that right now. So we're only checking this if it's not. So let's just see what happens. Let's see if this, this new assertion goes off. Oh, that went off much sooner. Okay, so f is minus 0.1. Right, so That's not good. It's a different problem. This minus 0.1 probably involves making things sync or something. Let's see. You know, okay, so this thing here has a minus 0.1. That gets stored. So this do physical moves happens later at the end. We could sanity we could sanity check when we store this target position into this move info, right? Assuming wait, I'm in the wrong file. That's why I'm not finding it. Okay. So target here, see, the question is, we're not naming this very clearly. Is this a gameplay target? Probably. There's no comment, right? That's not good. Okay. I'm trying to remember what my function is called. Oh, I think it's just add move. Yeah. So when we add a move, we pass this move info, and we're going to say, wasn't it called sanity check gameplay position? Now, yeah, so the visual positions are separate. So what's happening is, yeah, that's supposed to be the gameplay position. Must be on integer values. Even though it's a frickin' vector 3. Yes, yes, that's bad. Yes, it is bad. We will fix it, provided that everything works out. If data changed, is that change told to a manager who then handles it, or do parts tell other parts in the program that need to know about the change? I mean, for the most part, we don't make things that work that way. So this isn't like an event-driven system for gameplay, right? The things that would need to know about something like that are the undo system, basically. That's the main thing. And also, there's just a hook that happens when things happen in the game so that the rule processing can happen, the puzzle rule processing. But that's not triggered by detecting changes. That's triggered by user input mostly, and functions saying that something significant happened. So for the undo system, we just scan all the entities because we don't really want to. It's a little complicated why that's the best choice. Complicated to explain. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, good. This is what we expect. Okay, so now we're asserting at the add move site, right? So we went from asserting later to asserting earlier, and now we should be close to the problem, right? So this caller is the person who's passing the bad info, all right? So for example, we're using this thing called getMoveInfo, which isn't the only way to make a move info, by the way. But we're calling getMoveInfo. There's some other functions like that boring walk function that we just saw a minute ago. But this one is saying, hey, if there's an object in this position moving in this direction, look up all the magic effects on it or whatever and potential teleports and then decide where it actually goes to. And it looks like this function is wrong. It's returning a z minus 0.1. Which is strange. So now we'll go into get move info and do the same thing. Right, so this sanity check. Right, we're gonna I don't see a minus 0.1 in here explicitly. So we're just going to check that before we return it. And that is getting even closer, right? So this is a basic trick about debugging programs where complicated stuff happens later, like data gets stored and then used later. You always want to get back to the time when the data is generated because that'll tell you, right? That'll tell you what happened. So here we are. No. Interesting. That is strange because, well, okay, we might have returned differently. Oh, that's if there's, well, let's just, okay, here we go. Whoops. So if there was no color struct, we actually return here. I was thinking when I did that original one, oh, I should search for returns, but I didn't. And I looked down the thing and I didn't see it, even though it was highlighted. So those are the two times that we returned from there. So my bet is that we returned on the other one, the early return. And what that is it's saying, look, if there's no, oh, wow. When initializing the level now, our assert went off. Which is probably good. See, we're starting out objects with minus 0.1s, which doesn't seem right to me. So this might be like in the level, honestly, for all I frickin' know. This might be in the save data. Which would not totally surprise me. Especially because if you go back far enough in development, we had different policies about what was allowed to be in this value. So let me just take a peek at that. So we're going to move this sanity check back to load time. Load all entities. Load single entity. And I'm just going to say here, e.position. See what a useful technique this is? Yep, it's in the frickin' save data for the entity. Let's verify this. It's 1023_2 in, I forget what level this is. It's N Lily Bridge 2. So data levels, N Lily Bridge 2. And it was called what again? 1023. Oh, wait. That's not on disk, which means it was just created. It's not on disk. Interesting. Wait, what? It has to be on disk. It has to be on disk. Oh, wait. This will, okay, hold on. This will crash if we fail to load an entity. So let's put it down here anyway. This is a really interesting problem, actually. We're rooting out something really fundamentally weird. Let me just not trust Emacs for a second. Oh. You know what? I assumed that this was when loading that gameplay level that we were talking about, but I bet it's not. I bet, because there's 3 levels that we load on startup, or at least 2 levels that we load on startup. We load the particles. Oh God, it's going to be the particles. Okay. There's something else that I should put into our sanity check. So we have this entity is snapped to grid function. So particles and decorative objects are actually allowed to be on non-integer coordinates. Again, for reasons that are maybe ultimately not that good, but clarifying those would be another structural change that we don't want to totally go into right now. So what we can do is accept them from the checks that we're doing. Like, if we're going to push our checks all the way to load time, they're applying to everything. So we want to filter out the things for which that's legal. So okay. So here is this function, and when we go to, all right. We'll just put this check here. If entity is snapped to grid E, right? So particle source returns false, along with some of these other things. Now the question is if we need to accept anything from those other later cases. From the transaction move, I don't believe so. But from other things, maybe. Okay, get move info. Now we are hitting the one that we want to hit. Okay, so now, because once we put that exception in, the assert didn't go off during loading time, that means that our data is not messed up at loading time for these entities. But this guy is somehow getting a position with z is minus 0.1. And I'm not sure. That's definitely something that I did at some time. I don't see any variable declarations. So there are various things we could do. We could set a breakpoint when this guy gets loaded, because we know that this guy is valid when he gets loaded. And then we could set a data breakpoint on the z coordinate. This is why I can't switch debuggers yet until they support data breakpoints. So let's go. So this guy is entity ID this, right? Which, if we go into hex, it's just this. Okay, this is a gameplay. Oh, this is a gameplay object. So this wouldn't get loaded anyway. It gets created. So it's probably getting created and then its position is being set. Let's see what it is. It's a particle source again. Wait. Why are we calling get move info on a frickin' particle source? This function is only supposed to be for gameplay entities. So we found it a problem. Okay, like we're asking if the particle source is supported, right? Update support. So there should be another function. So we have this flag that, like, are we a moving entity or not? And we should be able to check that. That's a slightly different thing than this, but honestly, they're probably almost equivalent. It's just, this is going to be faster to check at runtime and maybe more authoritative in certain ways. Well, they mean slightly different things. Actually, for particles, that's not going to be right. So here is where we set these properties for every entity type. Right, okay, particle source is set to moving, so we don't want to use that actually. I guess we want this. This is really funny. I wonder how long this has been happening. So we're calling update supports on all moving entities, right? And the problem is that not all of these are gameplay entities. So we're going to comment this. Okay. Not all entities in the moving entities array are gameplay entities. For example, particle systems. The moving entities array holds everything that is not constant that you need to save state of for undo purposes of for. That's a really good double preposition. But we only want to check support for actual gameplay entities right now. Entity is snapped to grid is the closest thing we have to that, I think. Maybe I'm forgetting something, but whatever. If that. Oh, if not that. Okay. We could just say if, we could like reverse the thing, right? And say if it is snapped to the grid, blah, blah, blah. But then, I like the early out pattern because it lets you drop more things in the pattern, whatever. Oh, we went like a half a square of motion. We didn't die on startup, and we went like a half a square of motion. Okay, now what? So this is a weird thing. Okay, let me step back for a second. This is a really weird thing about programming, what I'm doing right now. Okay. The impulse as a human being who just wants your program to work is that you want it to get closer and closer to working, right? And so you maybe fudge some stuff and make it go. But I've actually been doing the opposite, right? I'm putting things into the program to make it fail harder sooner. And psychologically, if you're not a very experienced programmer, this is something you may lean away from doing because it seems bad. It seems like I'm breaking my program worse and worse. Like, geez, at the start of the stream, I could go almost to the end of the level before failing, and now I fail before I even get into the next square. But that's actually better, right? Because we're finding the actual problems and eradicating them, right? Whereas if you do the other thing, which I definitely am guilty of having done early in my programming career, where you just keep massaging things to try to get the program to go further and further in the hope that eventually that's going to be good enough, you will never have a robust program, right? Programs are in some sense mathematical objects, but they're very complicated ecosystem-like mathematical objects. And if there's poison in the ecosystem, you're always going to have problems. You have to clear that out. And that's what we're doing, right? And so on the one hand, it looks like we've retrogressed and we have a much more poorly working program, but actually it already works better. We're just voluntarily failing it, right? Probably if I take out that sanity check function that we added in, then we'll run at least up to the point where we did before, possibly further, but probably not. But that's not the point. The point is we're cleaning out the interior of the system, right? What if you write all this stuff that will fail harder and then never use it? No, I'm using it right now. Are you watching the stream, dude? Like, we literally just use that to find a bug. I am definitely not talking about the TDD thing where you write a bunch of stuff in advance that hopefully looks for problems. I don't believe that that's very efficient. But the thing that we're doing right now is specifically to hunt down a specific problem that we are having. All right. So, what kind of game is it? It's a puzzle game where you move around this world. It's a grid-based puzzle game. And so the problem that we're dealing with is things are not always aligned to the grid the way that they should be. That's the local problem we're dealing with. And then the bigger problem outside that is simply we're rewriting the movement system for the whole game. And you know, we had the whole game running on the old movement system, and so anytime you swap in a new system, you probably broke some things. And yes, some things broke, and so we're getting to the point where hopefully the new movement system will work approximately as well as the old system, and we can check it in and then improve it from there. All right, so we are now back here. So this again is a particle source. Okay, so we're doing other stuff. We're deciding if this particle source should fall, which doesn't seem good. Oh, we're again doing the moving entities array. All right, well, this is the same thing. It's in a different place. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna put a note here. Gameplay entities only. Now, if I end up having to do this too much, okay, this is two things. If we end up with 3 versions of this, then what we'll do is we'll make a fancy iterator. Maybe. Although that's not necessarily any cleaner. It's like, we'll see. I mean, really, update support should check the mount parent ID here too. I don't know, man. Do I have plans on when to do the compact talk? Not yet. I've already written the talk, because I gave it somewhere. I want to improve it a little bit, but also just figure out where to give it. We might do it just at the office. And then we just need to get the office set up in terms of recording a talk. So we're going to look into that. I definitely want to do it before the end of the year. Okay, hey, we got a half a square again. Oh, did I not actually put the thing? Oh, no, I did. Oh, dude. Okay. So we're quick sorting. Wow, this is really ugly. Okay. We're quick sorting on the array. All right. See, I tried to just iterate here, but actually we call get move info here. All right. So we're just going to copy the array. So I mean, I could make a temporary frickin' struct, but that's the same amount of work. So I'm not gonna worry about it too much. Which should not be called for non-gameplay entities, but moving entities contains non-gameplay entities. So first we make an array that filters those out. Okay, so for be consistent about what we're calling it. So that's an E, that's an E. So we quick sort, and then we do the for loop. Hey, look, we got some distance. Now my mouse cursor is like, oh, I'll do this. Okay. We got to like a teleport or something. So now, okay, now we're seeing a different problem. We're teleporting somewhere that's also not grid aligned, but a little bit in the opposite direction, which, remember I was saying before that the reason this caused a problem was because the thing was a little bit lower than 7, it wouldn't wrap. This one is higher than 7, and so it would wrap correctly, and so it doesn't cause that grid bounds problem. That was the original thing we were looking into. However, it's still wrong. So again, this is what I was talking about rooting out the problems in the program. Like, We don't want our program to be squishy. Even though this value being wrong doesn't cause a visible problem, we still want to fix the problem, even though we can kind of hand wave and get by, right? This is how you make sure you understand what your program is doing. Does it matter what kind of sorting algorithm is used? Yes, it definitely does. Eliminating technical debt? No, this isn't even technical debt exactly. Technical debt is maybe when your program is even correct, it's just over convoluted. And this is just wrong. So this is just a bug. Will the game get Vulkan support? Probably. As sad as it is, Vulkan doesn't seem like a very good API, but we don't have a choice. Like, there's just not really alternatives, so we got to do what we got to do. Okay. So we're adding support moves. This is, okay, so when something moves in the game, then anything riding on it also gets moved, right? And so, wow, okay, so here's a delta. This is a visual position delta, which is not, okay, see, we are passing a visual delta into a gameplay function, which is not okay. But we do have the information necessary, I think, right? This move info has start position and target. So we have this function called wrapped delta that we can call. We probably should store the, oh, we do have a delta that, oh, but it's not set. Why not? See, okay. We could fix this problem by calling wrapped delta, but we really would like this delta to be initialized. Linear move type is none. That is also not. That is also not good. See, when a system is new like this, it probably has some things that are not right that just happen to work, you know, because you haven't gone in and thoroughly looked at everything. So single is being passed in as a parameter here. We're filling it out here. Okay, so okay, wait, what? Why did it say type none down here? Is this different? Did our value change? Wait, was I looking at an invalid value? Hold on. Now I don't understand what was happening. Didn't I see move type none somewhere? Oh, maybe I was looking at this. I should rename this so that it's less confusing. That's a different thing than this. So this is actually okay. This is okay. The delta being 0 is not okay. So move info's delta is being passed into here. It's not. Does Lily have a delta? No. So the thing is, all right. Grid info dot start position info dot target. Cleanup. The Lily should probably just know what its delta is, period. We could look at the integer direction on the Lily, but this could have been nullified when it was blocked. But when we have time to look at it, we should change this. Okay, so now though, since we know this is also a problem that could happen, so I want to be able to use this delta with 100% reliability. So in add move, I'm going to make sure that this delta is consistent with the start and end position. So okay. This is going to be a weird check, so I'm going to put a no check in here. Delta is wrapped delta transaction entity manager proximity grid move info dot start info dot target if distance delta move info dot delta is great. Just going to put a random epsilon in here. Okay, something like that. This, I don't want to think too hard about this, which is probably why I'm not going to check it in. My suspicion is this will also break some more times. So we may actually get further from, wait, what? Proximity grid. There's no titty in this proximity grid. Okay. Oh, I said wrap distance. I meant wrap delta. Delta. All right. No, we got about as far. That's good, I guess. Okay, so we're actually on this line, even though Visual Studio is showing the wrong line, because it's Visual Studio. Another one of the ways in which this program is very bad. So delta, oh, damn it. Let's just look at move info. This is a teleport. Oh, you know, maybe we shouldn't do this check if it's a teleport. Because if you teleport, See, this is just a temporary check to sanity check. If you teleport, you could teleport the long way around a level so that the wrapping distance between 2 points is not the actual. Let's try that. I think that's the thing. I think that's what's happened there. Almost Europe friendly stream. Dude, we have 420 viewers. That's very Amsterdam friendly. All right, we got a little further. Okay. Okay, so now remember way back we put a check in get move info. And that has tripped. So one of these is, let's see, mover. I have to go to the C++ variable naming here, but that's mover.position. That's on integer coordinates. So info.delta is wrong. Right, and again, this is probably using visual things. So alters is not right. Beam is not set. So this probably gets set way up here. Orig delta. All right, garbage in, garbage out. So whoever's calling us, oh right, it's this thing. Remember I said I want to make sure that the delta in the move is correct so I could just pass it here. We never did that part because we were still making sure that the delta in the move is correct. So now let's, I just typed with my fingers one character off on the keyboard. Okay, so now delta is set correctly, right? This is a Lily move. So yeah, whatever. Now, we instead of saying orig delta, we just want to say single.moveinfo.delta. But is anybody else using that variable? No. So we just say single move info delta, and we delete that. All right. Hey, people. All right, well, the test failed possibly due to timing and stuff. So now here's the thing. It's quite possible that some timing depended on a lot of, okay. So the old movement system would change the position of an entity as soon as a movement interpolation started. The new movement system changes it about when you're halfway through the move with some exceptions. And so levels that are heavily timing based like this, the test, which was recorded with timed events, probably just has the wrong timing. And so I think that's what's happening here now. But we did make it all the way to the end, which is great. And so what I'm going to do is run a Benny test on the whole game with the debug build here. So it's going to be an annoyingly slow Benny test some of the time. But we just want to find a new level that we fail on now because we succeed on this level. And that's good. That probably fixes a lot of things. So now, usually when we Benny test, we want to see a small amount of, a small number of failures. We're probably going to have a larger number of failures because of these timing issues, which means that after the movement system is solidified, I want to go back through and replay all the levels. But of course, one thing at a time. So let's just start this. let me make sure that my test time rate, we'll crank this up to 30, but honestly, like this level, the timing is just obviously wrong. Yeah, this is going to take a while to go through. Oh, wait, maybe not. We already found a problem. And it's in our new sanity check, which is good. So before, we could Benny test through a large number of levels. This time, no. So, oh, we're loading. Okay. Maybe we should have a filter here that just logs errors, because we could fix up the coordinates during load. I mean, maybe we fix this here. We put a no check-in on it, and we say, look, what we really want to do is make a developer command that scrubs all the levels to ensure that the entities are on integer coordinates. But until that time, we can just have a workaround. Let's just see. Oh, but we would want to log an error here no matter what, because it's always possible for someone to even just go type something into a file or you know, do something weird in the editor. So I think we always would want that. Dude, C++. All right. Okay, that's not in the undoable data. It's just here. Okay, so it's an inanimate. Okay. This function, this entity is snapped to grid, is not quite the right function. Because here's the thing. Inanimates are not gameplay entities. But you can flag them in the editor as being snapped, right? So like, where is this function? It's in general 3D. See this? We're checking the flag. So really, we want to say entity is for gameplay or something. For gameplay. See, the problem is people are going to forget to update this as we add entity types. Let's just say, okay, so let's use this. Yeah, okay. Okay. So most of these things are not ever going to be in the moving entities array, right? However, some of them are. So particle source, anything here is stuff that we have to think about. Fortunately, this is a small subset. And really, it's just particle source. Really. Okay, so we're just going to do this for now. And, well, here, we're going to do that. Going to do that. And let's check for other uses of it. That was the one we just looked at. Editor stuff, editor stuff, editor stuff, editor stuff. I think this is our load thing. Yeah, okay, so this one should be like that. Who knows? Maybe that was wrong, but it seems good. We have a lot of viewers today. It's Saturday afternoon is the hot time to stream. Saturday afternoon, California time. All right, let's see what happens. Oh yeah, this level probably still passes. I forgot to write down. We'll find out whatever level we die in. We'll find out what it is and start on that level from now on. I thought it was this one. Oh no, it was after this. Oh, well, we passed. So this is going to be a little painful because not only is it a debug build, so tests on debug builds go slow, but a lot of like texture maps haven't been compressed, and we still force the game to load texture maps before, or to compress texture maps fully before running, which I think is a mistake. So we're just going to let that choke away in the background for a while. And we'll see how many levels we get through, and we'll see where we fail, if anywhere. But we have a lot of assertions in here now, so I won't be surprised if we fail a number of times. But it's good because we're cleaning out the problems. Even Russia is partially awake. Yeah, I want to go back to Russia again. I went this year. It was interesting. I got to see a little bit of Moscow, but just for 2 days because I spent the rest of the time getting my talk ready. So I should go back and see more. So are there any questions about what we have been doing? Ah, our assert went off. All right. Oh, it's in the undo system. Interesting. This is another one of those things where, are we having a productive day? Yes, totally. This is another one of those things where data gets stored and then comes back later, right? So something goes into the undo, and then we're pulling it out of the undo and using it, and maybe we're using a visual positioning correctly or whatever, I don't know. But first, let's figure out what frickin' level this is so we can start on it. Because we finished with the other one. This is Wizard Drop V2. It's one of my levels. So we're going to go here, Wizard Drop V2, and we're just going to restart and verify that in a single level test, without having to do the full Benny test, it should crash pretty fast. Well, it's a long level, but okay, that wasn't too long. So, you know, the dude died, we decided to undo, and we did something bad. Oh, oh no. Okay, here's the thing. Undo like I said, it's been a while since I worked on this, but I'm pretty sure that undo is not supposed to work correctly yet because this new movement transaction system has an array of all the transactions in progress, right? And that's not how it used to work. It used to be if an entity was moving, the entity itself would record its own move, and the regular entity serialization system would take care of restoring that when you undid, right? Because if an entity was moving and you did a turn and then you undo the turn, that other entity needs to be moving again from the same place, right? And so we changed where that information is stored because for various reasons, in part because things could have multiple moves of different kinds happening or whatever. However, the undo system doesn't record that information yet. So undo is not expected to work, which is another reason why levels might fail tests. However, I don't think that that means that it should be possible to get non-integer coordinates anyway. So we're not trying to totally make the undo system work yet because that requires this other thing. That might be a good next stream to do once we get all these bugs out. But we do want to figure out what is going on here. So undoable data.position is really probably wrong. It is slightly, oh no, it's very off in Y, it's slightly off in Z. That looks like a visual position to me. So it's quite possibly This is a very weird thing that's happening. Oh, you know, okay. This might again be, this sanity check down here is a different one than the one we've been adding actually. But this might not be a gameplay entity again. Because I think we're maybe not checking here. So let's see, type, oh, we have this. It's a group. Yeah, this is not a gameplay entity. So I guess we forgot in update physical position to check this. If is for gameplay E, sanity check gameplay position. How entity is for gameplay? Is that what I called it? We could shorten that name probably. Let's see what happens. See, sometimes your checking is overzealous, but it's part of the cost of making sure that your program works. Okay, this is great, actually. We expect a fail because the undo system doesn't work and because the timing is different. Fails are fine. Like test fails are fine for now. They're not fine in the end. They're fine for the place where we are now. What is not fine is assertions or crashes. And so we're going to re-hit the Benny test here. And let me go do some temperature control. So any serious on-topic questions about what we are doing today? Was it changes in the gameplay that led to the rewrites of the move-in transaction system, or did you simply find unplanned interactions? It wasn't really changes to the gameplay, although we were definitely like figuring out what the rules should be as we built levels and designed the game. But really, it was evident from pretty early on that we would need to handle this problem well. The problem was just knowing what would do that, because there's just a lot of different rules in this game. So it wasn't really about changing the rules or adding too many new ones. It was just that it takes some experience with the game to see what the consequences are of all the rules that you've put together and what that means in terms of the technical support level that the engine needs to provide for those gameplay rules, right? So, and then once you start seeing that, then you start building a system that you think maybe will solve it, and then it has certain problems, and then you're like, oh, okay, well then let me do this other thing, and you try that, and that has certain other problems that you didn't necessarily see in advance. And so it's just been a process of that. Aha! We finally have hit another assertion. Let's see where it is. Oh, we're loading entities again. This is a door. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Doors really should be at integer coordinates. All right, let's just see first of all. Okay, this is a level called toggle, also one of my levels. So let's just start, and I think as soon as we start the game, we're going to try and load this in assert. Yeah. Okay, great. So toggle has a door. Now we should be able to, since this is a door, it's a regular vanilla entity, we should be able to look on disk and, whoops, and see it. So it's 14280. So data levels toggle 14280. All right. So position, yep, that position is not at integer coordinates or even close. So we are going to want to do a fix up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a fix up function here. I'm going to leave the assert in to make sure the fix up function worked. If we do a fix up, we are going to log it as an error. And that way then, after we run our cleanup process on the level, or on all the levels in the game, afterward, if any new things happen, then we will notice them, right? Okay, so here, maybe fix up position E. Okay, actually, let's put that in the entities for gameplay. So that's just going to go down at the bottom of this file. Maybe fix up coordinate, right? And like that. And then maybe fix up coordinate is going to be rounded is cast to float, cast to int value. If rounded is not equal to value, first we log an error, and then we say set the pointer to what? Rounded. right? So log print maybe fix up gameplay position error a coordinate of whatever is at a non-integer position was whatever, setting it to whatever, right? And then I have a string. Is it ID string, entity string? Okay. Entity string of E and value and rounded. Okay. So we do that. See what I mean? I just clicked on the title bar to raise the window and it like did this as if it was a multi-click. I didn't frickin' multi-click. It's like some recent update to Visual Studio broke timing or something. Wait, is this one called toggle? Yeah, okay. That's not the level I thought it was. But yeah, also one of my levels. Okay, so this works. The test, again, doesn't pass for timing purposes, for timing reasons. I'm also just a little bit, oh yeah, this guy just misses getting on his lily pad, right? Like if you watch it, yeah, he just doesn't successfully get on it. It's probably too late. So that's all good. So now, yeah, every time we load this level, we're complaining about the door and the gate. So, but we're just rounding them to the nearest coordinate now. Oh, I promised to put a no check in there. No check-in, do a big sweep over existing entities and change the actual file data. So just historically, for whatever reason, back when maybe the rules were different, we generated some entities with weird positions. That's just what happens in video games, man. So we're going to clean that up. But I don't want to derail myself and do that yet. I want to finish the current task, which is somehow managing to get through all our levels. You have a thing you'd like me to check out. That doesn't sound like an on-topic question. So maybe later. Maybe later. Nobody else has serious questions? Well, that's very sad. How much of the game can you keep in your head at once? Do you mean the code or the levels or everything? Did I really beat up a car thief one time? No comment. The code. I mean, it's hard to say because the thing is right now, I'm doing this game and a compiler and another project that we haven't announced. So my headspace is shared among more than just this game, and so it's hard to say. But when it comes to the game engine and stuff, There's definitely things that I forget about a little bit, like details that I forget about, but it's just not that complicated. Like I go back and look at something and say, oh yeah, that's how that works. And then I just do it, right? It's not like anything ever falls out of my head far enough that I have to spend a long time figuring out how it works, usually. What's next? An entire OS? Maybe someday. I mean, somebody's got to do it. Like, look, if nobody ever makes a new PC operating system, where are we going to end up? Just in terms of systems working correctly, right? Forget even issues like, whether Windows is too exploitative and too anti-consumer or whatever. Just like even Linux, like it's insanely complicated for what it is, and it just doesn't work. So like somebody's got to step in and do something. Now, I don't have time to do that right now, but later, if nobody else has done it, I would consider it. Will you have to re-record currently failing Benny tests once you fix the movement system? Those that fail because of timings. Yes, I will have to do that. It's going to be really annoying because it's probably at least 100 levels. But that's a good day of work, like if you work seriously. I have to remember how to solve them sometimes, which is why it probably takes a day or maybe more. But I also don't want to do that prematurely. Like while everything's broken is a good time to like go adjust timings and make sure that everything is really robust. Like there always was a thing where LilyPad's movement timing was a little bit messed up in the face of undo. In fact, I'm going to write down to check that. So we want to iron out a few of those things before we re-record all the tests. But yes. Wow, our Benny test is still going, people. Look at that. Ah, that's a level I made last month. I really like that level. Is a 20 years game still a thing? Yes, it will use the engine that we are building right now. That's the whole reason that we're doing this. Or not the whole reason, but one of the major reasons. VLAN community is making an OS. Isn't that... I don't follow this stuff the way apparently some people do, but isn't that the people who say they've already solved all the problems but don't deliver anything? Like what? I mean, I guess I don't deliver anything either, but I don't know, man. What do I think about Stadia and streaming? That's off topic. We're just talking about programming right now. You just saw my presentation at Reboot 2017. There is another one that's sort of the sequel to that one that was in Game Lab Barcelona 2018, when I think I make a significantly clearer case about why some of these programming paradigms don't work. So you might want to check that out. Maybe someone can paste a link to that one in the chat. It's also a programming language demo, and I talk about why some popular ideas about how to program inherently make code that is very slow. Been a web developer so long that you find it daunting to step back towards software development. Any advice for switching back towards C, C++? No, you just do it. That's the thing, is you just stop engaging in procrastinating behavior and you just go do it. Are we infinite looping? What's happening? Are we compressing a texture that takes a really long time? Let's give this a minute or two and see if our console moves. Otherwise, we have a new problem. We have some textures that really take a long time to compress, but I don't think that this level would use them. I think this is like a prototype level. Do we prototype new projects, or how do we go about starting a new thing? Like, we don't start new projects very often at all, like every few years. And so, like, usually by then I just know what would be a good thing to do because I've just had a long time to think about it. We don't like prototype a bunch of ideas and brainstorm and whoa. Okay, we're in an infinite loop in entity support, which is not that surprising because that's a new thing. It's a recursive thing that we wrote for the new system that I know has some infinite loop danger in it. And so somehow we're infinitely, let's see how big this array is now. Oh, it's empty, wait. Result. This has only got two things. Where are we looping then? I assumed when we were there that we would be looping there, but find supported entities. Okay, there. So upper never stops being null. All right. So this was snipper clips 0. So let's just change our level to that. It's interesting that we're actually now into a new class of bug, which is great, because the sooner we mow these down, the better. Did we get feedback on the language yet? No. And we're not really looking for feedback exactly yet. Like the initial thing is just like make sure that it works well enough for what it is, like functionally. And then we'll start talking to people about language design and stuff. Did someone make WebAssembly work through LLVM? I'm pretty sure that's a thing that has been done. Oh, for this compiler? No. No, we don't care that much about web. It's not... Like, people who work in the web world already have a vastly different set of priorities, so it's not a high priority. Do we send the compiler to RAD? No. Okay. So, find supported entities. So we're doing that. We're doing that. There's only one thing. E hit. So E is at 10.10.3. It is at 10.10.2. That is weird because that's below us. So why are we saying that we support that entity if it's actually below us? That doesn't make sense. Maybe it's in the wrong place in the collision grid. And we're finding it? I don't know. So we're probably going to find E now. Yeah. So we're mutually recursing between two things. This step is correct. The thing under us is supporting this thing. But then now we're on the upper thing. We're on the 3, and we're going to find a 2. So why? Why are we finding that? Well, this function is kind of complicated and has a lot of steps. So let's just see. We found two things. And one of them is the entity. So somehow this guy had his position changed in a way that was not backed up by the proximity grid, which is not good. That is not good. Okay, yeah. So who is this guy? Who is Darkman? It's a gate. Why would a gate have its position changed or be in the wrong place? What if we snapped it? Like maybe when we load the entities. No, because we would have outputted an error. I need to update the game so that that animation's there, but I don't want to do that and destabilize. So we would have seen an error here, I think, if we had rounded the coordinates of the gate. Like I'm thinking maybe when we loaded it, we put it into the grid and then we rounded the coordinates, something. Let's just see what is going on. So we have a cached Z index of 2. Oh. Wait. So sometimes in this game we do 2D checks and sometimes we do 3D checks. And I would have thought that we would be successfully doing a 3D check. Maybe not. So it's actually just a 2D grid, right? And then we use this Z index sometimes. But the Z index is actually correct. So what I said a minute ago about like, oh, maybe the position is not being reflected, that is not true. So let's look again. Wait, we're saying xy only equals true. Okay, so really, this part is actually correct. Wait. Okay, it's a gate that is mounted. But we don't remove it from the supported entities array. This is wrong. This should say remove. Otherwise, bad things will happen. That's a bug that doesn't have much to do with our whole system that we're working on. Let's see. Let's take out our breakpoint. See if we pass the level. I think so. Yep, it's just running real slow because debug build. Well, Benny test again. How are things going, everybody? What is happening? There's a lot. Chat is very lively today. How do you decide when to go into in-depth debugging like this versus just a quick fix to keep the program running? Is it when you reach certain milestones in the development? I mean, it's very context dependent. Like, I definitely, even with regard to this specific movement system issue, I definitely did a lot of quick fixes to it over time, just to make it a little better or keep it working well enough so that we could work on other parts of the game. But I always knew that, like, look, we have to cache that in eventually and rewrite this system to ship the game. And like I said, this is like rewrite number 5, right? So it's just like, you just need to be making sure that you're progressing effectively toward completing a high quality thing at any given time. You should have in your head what that map looks like to get you from where you are to the end. Maybe not completely, maybe there's a big unknown territory in the middle. Then your goal should be, how do I get into that unknown territory, right? From where I am, because that's when you start having answers. And so knowing that, you should be able to pick 1 or 2 things that are important, the biggest, most important things to do that'll let you progress. And once you know what those things are, don't rat hole on other stuff. Then you can do those quick fixes to the other things, right? That help you get those main, most important tasks done, right? That's a thing that happens to certain kinds of programmers, is they get lost in the maze. Like, they want to do this important thing, but then this other thing kind of needs to be done. And then that requires this other thing to kind of need to be done. And some programmers will just go off and diligently, very seriously try to solve all the problems in that dependency chain. And the issue is, first, that takes forever. And so it's like being lost in a maze and you get sidetracked and forget what you were trying to do. But secondly, you often will end up going to do all these high quality solutions on these side tasks. And then those high quality solutions end up being wasted work because, you know, you finish the important thing eventually, and that makes some changes in your understandings and realizations about what needs to happen. And then the side stuff needs to get rewritten anyway, right? So I am a serious proponent of rough drafting parts of your program, right? Doing simple fixes, crappy versions of things that you know are not good enough for the final thing, just to enable you to work on the important things soon. But it is a judgment call. Like, I can't give a specific formula for when to do that. How much value have I gotten out of the metaprogramming facility so far? A decent amount. It's been very good. Yeah. We'll release the game on macOS. Maybe. It's just, Mac is a giant pain in the butt for a place that nobody buys games. So it's kind of starting to not really be worth it anymore. Especially as Apple gets more annoying about, first of all, betraying people who bought 32-bit programs, and secondly, making it more annoying to ship new programs. So I don't know. I mean, Mac might end up being dead as a place where people buy software soon. And if it is, we probably won't do a Mac port. It's hard to say. If yes, will you write your own metal renderer, or will you use something like Molten VK? No, I mean, things like Molten VK are kind of crap. We don't ever do that. We would write our own metal renderer, or we'd contract with somebody to write a metal renderer for our engine if we were to ship on that platform. That's what we did in The Witness. Do we have a type for representing types? Yes, there is a type called type. Did you finish the SOA, AOSOA metaprogramming stuff? Not totally. We still want to do another stream there at some point. It's just, you know, I want to nail some of this stuff down before we go off and do that. Dude, our levels, they're cranking away. Still going. Yeah, we, I forget what the thing, there was a second stream we wanted to do to continue extending the user level SOA stuff. And there was a thing I wanted to do for that. It might have been the data scope macros. There's a whole chain here. Like, it might have been that I want macros working in data scope correctly. which I did some work for on my laptop, but then that is being prevented from working by some other piece of the compiler that is more complicated than it should be and that we need to clean out. And so I was going to do a stream where we do that. But then, like I said, because the game is destabilized on this computer that I stream from, then I said, well, we should fix that, especially because it's been a long time since I started this thing and it's not done yet. So, you know, sometimes the things pile up, but we're addressing them in an order that will get us to the end. Cool. So as you find the most important parts on the project through drafting, you focus on those and go in depth on them. And I understand you're saying its judgment call was about which parts are the ones you decide are important. Yes, that is correct. That is correct. That is how I think about it. Shouldn't there be a break in the for supported loop? Why? No. No, because supported just has a small number of things. So we do the loop for each of those things. In terms of if you mean in here, we shouldn't in principle really, like if we find two gameplay objects in a square, only one of them should not be flat. If there are more than one, we're just setting upper to be the last one that we happen to encounter. But this isn't really something that should actually happen in a correctly functioning thing. So we're not going to worry about breaking from it. Like break or no break here is kind of arbitrary. Because if that were to come into play, something's already messed up. We could put an assert here. That would just be a little bit annoying, and I've got enough to think about. But if we ever run into a problem with that, we'll start putting an assert places like that. Yeah, I think stuff like Molten VK is really dumb. I think it's part of what's defocusing Vulkan, and they should just drop all that foolishness. But I don't know, like everybody is crazy these days and doesn't understand how to program. So I don't know, man. I don't know. Like people are wasting years of their life doing stuff like Molten VK. I don't understand. If syntax changes, can you automate changing the existing code? Yes, and that is the plan. It's just we haven't tested that yet because we haven't changed the syntax yet. But that is on the roadmap. We will try that out, and we will see what happens, and hopefully it will be good. Let me start heating up some tea water, then I'll answer this math question. And we got another assert. Kind of good news, I guess. Okay, the question was, how much math do you think is essential to have a good grasp for game development, or more specifically for advanced audio programming? Okay. You need linear algebra for both of those things. Probably more for general games than for audio, but you need it for audio because, I mean, well, also for audio, you need complex number stuff, which is related to linear algebra because a lot of types of linear algebra want to use complex numbers also, right? So I would learn, okay, let me try to find this book. Do I have it here? Or is it at the office? You know, rather than try to dig through my bookshelves, I'll look up the books that I recommend on Amazon, right? So first of all, this is not an Amazon ad, it's just where I know to look up books. Oh God, somebody. Okay, this book, Digital Signal Processing Primer, by Ken Stieglitz. I found that to be very good, very approachable, very understandable. Let's get this assert out of the way. I really like this book. It is, you know, it's been a long time, so maybe there are better books now, but this is one that I personally encountered and found very enjoyable. Another one, this book, Hypercomplex Numbers, Elementary Introduction to Algebras. This will do, you know, complex numbers. It'll do quaternions, and it'll also do octonions. And so you'll understand that whole thing. It is not a super practically oriented book, so I doubt it'll say anything about how to rotate objects with quaternions, because I don't remember, but still very good book, very good book. This book, also super good, linear algebra done in a coordinate-free way, which vastly expands the ability that you have to think through problems and solve them. Super good book. I think if you read those 3 books, you are in not that bad of a position. Someone's asking for links. Okay, I will link these in chat. So this is linear algebra done right. These are big spammy Amazon links. This is hypercomplex numbers. And someone else is pasting links too. Maybe those are better links. I don't know. And this is DSP Primer. So those are some recommendations. All those books are good. Please put a reading list in my channel description. Somebody remind me to do that later. I kind of want to get back to solving this bug. But yeah. We're trying a new tea today. We are trying out Harney & Sons Hot Cinnamon Spice Tea. In frickin' bags. I usually don't do tea bags at home, unless it's Bengal spice, but I wanted to try this tea. Wow, it certainly smells good. Oh my God. Too fancy for bags? No, tea is just better when it's like fresh leaves. It steeps better. It gets more permeated by water. Is there a list of the comment annotation things? No. Do I integrate those with version control system? No. They're just for me. Lots of plastic in tea bags. That is often the case as well. I don't know if these have plastic. They do look plasticky. All right. We are asserting we're using mirrors. Oh, this is a thing I was looking into before. Okay. So this is saying we're trying to teleport something with a mirror, and the move failed. Probably because the entity was already moved. Yes. Okay, we're trying to teleport a skipping stone. Let me, let's figure out what level this is. Everyone can push, oh no, slam bridge. So let's start up on that level and I'll show you what this one is. Whoops. So here, this involves teleporting a stone that's skipping across the water. Like I have just pushed it, right? And right when it's south of the mirror there, we hit the button to teleport it. Now, probably what has happened. So it's a little bit weird because it looks like it's skipping into the square, but remember we're running at a low frame rate because of the debug build and all that. So it may well have decided to start skipping into the next square. And the problem is, well, we want to verify this, that this is what's going on. But the problem is, technically, if it has started skipping into the next square, then that transaction is kind of locked in, and there's nothing we could really do about it. But the problem is, if that's our policy long term, then we can't do certain kinds of puzzles, and we want to be able to do those puzzles, right? So first, we verify that this is what's happening. Second, if it's what's happening, it's actually a little bit good, because the whole reason that we're rewriting the transaction system to work this way is to be a lot more robust, and that if we want to break transactions, we have to do it explicitly, and that enables us to deal with the consequences in very conscious fashion and deliberate fashion, and make sure the consequences are what we want them to be, as opposed to just sweeping it under the rug and just hoping everything works out, which is how you end up with broken puzzles, right? So, yeah, so, you know, I had this kind of situation happening before. And so what happened is, if we don't, so get pending move position, well, let's just look into it. I put this call here just because, hey, it's a place to put a breakpoint if we don't succeed, right? So we're going to do this and just restart the thing. And that'll let us step into the function when we assert. Yeah, well, before we assert. All right, so we're stepping in. So is it in a move transaction? Let's see. It is. So this entity is already moving. That's no surprise because it's a stone skipping across the water. This transaction has physically moved. Okay, so it hasn't started skipping into the next square yet. So now I thought we did something about this. We had this remove completed linear moves. And that's supposed to say, like, look, if, well, okay, let's go down here, right? This is the move for that actual entity. Oh, it's a teleport. It is finishing teleporting. Okay. Now this is still not going to be good enough eventually. So this, I think we could handle. Clean up Actually, we don't care about move type here. Teleports as well. So no check-in, rename. So we're just not going to check this because we're checking to see if something has finished its move. Now, here's the thing. Once this physically moved flag is set, it means all the entities are in their new positions, which means we don't actually have to break a transaction to do this teleport, this new mirror teleport, right? Wait. Oh, it's okay. The thing that's happening is the opposite. We teleported the stone, and the teleport is finishing, and then it's trying to skip out of the teleport, is what's happening. So that's okay, but we may end up in situations where there's weird timing. And I want to write these down for later. We would be able to check in the system without this, but like, what happens if you try to mirror a stone after it's moving into the next, after it's committed to moving into the next square? We need to deliberately break that transaction. And we don't right now, I don't think. All right. Anyway, yeah, we're just going to recompile with that. Is the custom backend being used right now? We're using the LLVM backend. Just, I think it's got slightly better debug information, but maybe that's not even true anymore. Maybe there's no good reason to use it in this case, but that is what I am doing. And so that's why compiles are taking like 3 seconds, because LLVM is pretty slow, honestly. Wow, this tea is pretty good. Oh, man. I kind of want to let it steep more, but it might get too strong. This is a good tea, dude. I like it. I might have oversteeped it a little bit, actually. It's a good tea, though. Okay, so reset, test. All right, well, we passed the level with that change. So we might have broken something else potentially, but I don't think so. Because once we set that flag, any other time remaining in the transaction is just cosmetic because the gameplay changes have occurred. So we're just going to Benny test again, and it's going to take a long time. What's the tea? It's called Hot Cinnamon Spice or something by Harney and Sons. It's really good. Oh, someone just sent a nice long note about how they liked the witness, and thank you for the hard work. You're welcome. We're really glad, like, when people have a really interesting and positive experience with a game like that, that is why we put so much work into the games. So it's always good to hear people who got something out of it. So thank you. It is 23:58 in Poland. Yes. Late night. How do you prepare for your talks and how long does it take you? It is probably about 4 days for a talk, sometimes less. And how do I prepare? I just think really hard about what I want to say, which does involve some procrastination a lot of the time. And then I actually make a rough draft of the talk in my slideshow program and figure out what the flow of it should be and how long approximately it's going to be. And then I start adding images and making it look better. And generally the day before I give the talk, I will do at least one full run through of the talk by myself, just in a hotel room or something, sometimes more than that. Depending on the length of the talk and how much in advance I've gotten it done. But if you just go up on stage in front of people and just say something for the first time that you haven't verbalized before, your brain will not be ready to say it in the same way. Unless it's something that you've been thinking about and talking about forever. But if it's something new that you've just been thinking about recently, you want to go through that process of figuring out the phrases by which it'll come out the best. You don't have to memorize those phrases, but like you just get your brain to deal with the communication, right? Because written communication and verbal communication work differently. So sitting there to write something out, like as an outline, doesn't mean that you figured out how to say it. What's my favorite flavor seasonings on popcorn? So Cinerama in Seattle has this really good chocolate popcorn, which is nice, chocolate and salty. In general, I don't eat popcorn that much. Give me just a regular butter with some salt. How far is this stream? I don't know. We're pretty far. I mean, we're going to wing it a little bit. I should go eat lunch eventually. We'll see. Do I personally have ideas for real-time ray tracing? I don't. It's not an area that I think about that much. I do think that graphics will probably end up being mostly real-time ray traced eventually because it solves a lot of problems. You just need to be at the point where you're ready to pay that cost, where it's more efficient for certain scene types than regular rendering, and or just you have that surplus computing power. And we're not quite there yet, but we will be eventually. Do I mind explaining how we do threading in the games in Engine? We don't really have a lot of threading in the engine right now. I am not so some people talk about how their game engines are like very pipelined and you set up a render thread while you do gameplay code and stuff. I'm not a super big fan of that, especially if that pipeline gets deep, because it introduces several frames of latency, which is not good. At high frame rates, though, I think if you introduce 1 frame of latency by just having a sim thread and a render thread, or introducing half a frame of latency, that could be acceptable at like 144 hertz or 240 hertz. If it allows you to get to those frame rates in the first place, which you might not be able to do, right? And so there's definitely a trade-off. But some of the ways it's been done in the past, I think, is very bad. Like in the Xbox 360 timeframe, for example. So, you know, mainly we use threads for a few simple things. We have an audio thread that runs the whole time and plays sound. And once per frame, we take a lock in the main thread, I think, and we push the regular data about entities into the audio thread so that, for example, the positions of things are updated and all that. That's how we do that synchronization. We also do threads for saving your save game, because we want to autosave and you don't want to take a frame hitch when you autosave. And on some platforms, saving could be synchronous and very slow. So that thread it's just waiting on a semaphore, and you put some save data into a list and you ping the semaphore and the thing just pulls off the list and saves it out, right? That's very simple. That's about it. I might be forgetting some things, but that's about it right now. Have we determined a set of optimizations that are absolutely necessary for the language? No, I'm not sure. Do you mean optimizations for the compiler to run fast, or optimizations to generate good code? If the latter, then the answer is we're not totally at that point yet. Feed is getting stuttery. Well, I'm sorry about that. I don't know what to do about that. Oh, your end? Well, okay, good. I'm not recording this locally, so hopefully it'll be good enough to upload to YouTube. Wow, we're...
Telling the truth is a scary predicament. Telling the truth is a bitter herb. Telling the truth is a dangerous tunnel. When you get out of that tunnel, you've got bitter herb. Black life ahead. Telling the truth is a dangerous... Dangerous! Telling the truth can be dangerous. What? Telling the truth can be dangerous. Can be dangerous business. Telling the truth. Why? Why? Telling the truth can be dangerous business because if you're...
Because the main thread is stalling so much, loading and things, we're losing audio. Which is sad, because you don't want to lose audio during this song. It's what happens when you run debug build, though. Although I'm kind of worried that we have a thread priority problem or something. I feel like we have a thread priority problem. Like, that shouldn't really happen. So we'll maybe look into that later. Anyway, though, the test is still cranking away. Stutter is real and your connection is still 1 gigabit. Well, whatever, man. Stutter is probably from the CPU chugging while I'm running the tests. Maybe. I mean, this is supposed to be like an 8-core machine with lots of special computing power. So OBS says 0 dropped frames. Now, I don't know if like mistimed frames is a thing, but OBS says no frame drops. So I keep skipping your message. What is your message? No, that's an off topic. That's going off and investigating some random thing that a compiler does on Godbolt is too far for, we're talking about what we're doing today mostly. So definitely on levels with a lot of animated guys, we run slower. That's sort of a thing that I need to look into. But in general, yeah, debug build runs slower than I would like. So that's going to have to be investigated. You thought the stutter might be a hint at a problem? No, I mean, a lot of what it is, so there's certain things, if you mean the stutter in the game and not like on the stream. I mean, in the game, for sure, there are things that are kind of slow. So like if we load a new animation for a character, for example, that's totally synchronous right now, which it shouldn't be in the final game. It should get loaded in advance. And we do all this math processing on the animation and stuff that's not that expensive in release builds, so it goes pretty fast. But in debug build, there's all kinds of things enabled that make it slower. So those stutters are bigger. A lot of those are like texture compression stutters when we load a new level. A lot of it is maybe just like range checks in the character animation, you know. I don't know. There's all sorts of reasons why the debug build runs slow. If it gets too slow, we can go in and optimize those. But for now, again, we're working on a different problem. we're getting pretty far through the game. I mean, maybe if we did a release build bunny test, we would have finished. I don't know if we have such a thing as release build with asserts that are fatal. And the problem is, because we're logging a number of errors, because I haven't updated, we have this missing animation that's like spamming for errors, or multiple of them. So like, I could run a release mode bunny test and then search for the string error, but there's going to be too many false positives right now. Could it be from the console getting flooded with those angry red lines? Probably not. Like, that's probably only one line of console output per frame, which is not that much. Or per test frame, which there's like 30 test frames per rendered frame in a time levels. But that's still, you know, computers can do tens of things. It's the year 2020. Although the Windows console is kind of slow. Let's see what our memory use is. We might have a leak or something. No, I mean, our memory is still around 3 gigs, which is not bad. So we might have some small leaks, but we don't have any huge leaks. Like, according to this, OBS is using more CPU than the game. According to this, Visual Studio is using significant amounts of CPU sometimes. Oh, are we actually running? We're actually running in the debugger, dude. And we have breakpoints set. So, like, that might be a problem. Yeah, running in the debugger. So here's another thing that's making the game extra slow. When you run in the debugger, if you use C's malloc, which we actually fall back to, or no, maybe we don't anymore. But we might be calling libraries that do that. Like if you use C's malloc, it goes into a really slow thing unless you have an environment variable set, which I don't remember if we do. So eight cores being able to do 4 billion calculations per second isn't that much. Yeah, dude, wait till these new AMD 32 core machines come out. The ones they just announced. I don't remember what the street date is for those, but like, dude. So right now we're in this really long promise 2 test that ends up not completing anyway.
Why? 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 Telling the truth can be dangerous business because if yourself, you don't know why. Huh? Well, I'm just giving you what the idea is. Telling the truth can be dangerous business. If you don't know yourself, then you don't know why.
Oh, is that brilliant?
Telling the truth can be dangerous business. Honest and popular don't go hand in hand. If you admit that you can play the accordion, no one will hire you in a rock and roll band. But we can't sing our hearts out. And if we're lucky, we'll no neighbors complain.
Whoops, I was muted. Someone saying, "Hey, I thought you didn't like AMD products because you wanted things that work." I'm not a fan of the huge instability of AMD GPU drivers. Hopefully they're fixing that recently, but I still don't take the risk. I've been burned too much. But if you saw the list of Intel CPU errata that was released this week, oh man, they are bad. They are so bad. And those are the ones that they had to admit. So like, who even knows? Like, Intel's got problems now, dude. That's all I'm saying. They have serious, serious, serious problems. Like the thing about you could crash your CPU by using shuffle instructions. Okay. Great. What am I supposed to do about that? Oh, nothing? Okay. So like, you put all this effort into like all these super, way too complicated, way overbearing security models for the operating system, and someone can just destroy your machine by running software at the lowest privilege level, right? As long as they can execute instructions, you're hosed. So like, the way we're doing things isn't working. It's not working. Do I think Intel stuff is worse than AMD's RAND stuff? I mean, nobody calls RAND, if you mean the C library routine. So I don't know what you mean by that. That's not generally a CPU function. If you mean a RAND instruction, I don't know what you're referring to. Doing comparisons between different levels of CPU flaws is, I think, it starts to become very context dependent, like what kind of programs are you running on there and all that. Read rand CPU instruction, you're guessing. Did they have a problem? Like, did read rand not return really random numbers? I mean, that sounds a little bit bad, but honestly, like, it's very bad if you're trying to do a cryptographic application, right? For everybody else, like most software probably doesn't care about that, right? Whereas all software wants jump to work, or like anyone who uses SIMD wants shuffle to work. So it returns 0 always. Wow. How'd they manage to ship that? Return -1. How did they manage to ship that? I don't know. How long did it take to create those tests? I don't know. When you work on something for a long time, you just put work in. That's what happens. I mean, technically speaking, a long series of -1s is a valid random sequence. So, you know, who are you to say that those aren't the correct random numbers? What do I think about the Minix OS on chip? It's insane. You shouldn't have that much complexity in your CPU. Sorry. We need to start subtracting things until we don't need that anymore. Is there a technical aspect why you chose to write a 3D engine with continuous moves instead of a simpler 2D engine grid-based? Well, I started by making a 2D engine and then built it into a 3D engine. It's mostly gameplay reasons and because we want to sell the game to people. Wow, this test is still going. We really need to speed up the debug test. This is like taking frickin' half an hour to run or something. So we're going to have to think about that. This came back from Handmade Conf. Oh, is it over? Wait, it probably goes till at least 5 or 6, right? But I guess it's demo time or something and the talks are over. I thought about going there. The thing was, I booked a flight and I got tickets for the conference, but there ended up being something in town last night that I really wanted to go to here in San Francisco. And I would have had to like fly out and get there at like 2 a.m. and wake up at 7 a.m. It just wasn't going to be good. And I'd rather, and I have a list of work that I really want to get done. So I put all these things together and I was like, you know what? The best move is to stay home and work and maybe stream some of it. And so that's what we're doing. Wow, this one's still going, man. And it's obviously way off track. We missed getting on a lily pad due to timing issues, and so the rest of it isn't going to work. So, like all the okay, we finally got off that level. Wow, we're on our like 3rd or 4th dangerous business. I don't like how much audio breakup we're getting. Does test time depend on internal game clock? Depends what you mean. So there are 2 classes of levels. There's levels with timed elements and levels without timed elements. For the levels without timed elements, there's really no time in the test logic at all. It just plays back moves. And those tend to go fast, those levels. The levels that tend to play back pretty slow are the levels with timed elements, where we actually simulate exactly the time steps that we simulated during recording in order to get 100% numeric reproducibility. So those kind of depend on what the frame timing was when we recorded. But then during playback, in theory, we do the same things and get a 100% match, right? So it should, like the playback results should not depend on frame time during replay. But of course, the operative word is should. There could be bugs. There probably are because it's a large computer program. So yeah. But then if there are bugs, we should find them and fix them. Talks are over, demo time next. Okay. How often do I have to delete a lot of code, throw away entire systems? Well, I mean, have to is a loaded term. Some people never do that and choose to work around it. Like often I just figure it's going to be cleaner and produce a better result if I wipe something out and redo it as opposed to incrementally trying to walk that direction. But sometimes I decide the better move is to incrementally walk that direction. It just really depends on what the specific thing is that you're doing. The tests are this long, imagine the game. Oh man, we're 1 square off. Well, you know, if we run the tests in release mode, it only takes like 10 minutes. And so we have to maybe make a release with asserts or something for cases like this. Because the problem right now is all our array bounds checks are turned on, all our cast bounds checks are turned on. And because we have to run exactly the same number of simulation steps for timed levels, it makes those slower. And so I think we're maybe going to make a new build mode. But it would also, you know, there's probably some reasons why we're slow here that we don't have to be. Are we done? I think we're done, dude. Okay, guess what? We passed. I mean, we didn't pass the test. We certainly failed a lot of them. Probably most of the tests with timed elements. Even this one we failed. That's weird. Oh, because this one has falling in it. But it shouldn't be timed falling. Like the dragon just didn't die for some reason. I think that's a bug. I think when we teleport dragons to infinity, we don't reevaluate the gates now or something. We're gonna have to look into that. But let's just see how many fails we got. It's probably over 100. Oh yeah, 144 failed. That's not bad though. So next up is going to be making undo work. So like all these mirror aisles levels, for example here, don't have any timed elements in them. So if they're failing, it's probably because undo doesn't work correctly. So that's going to be our next step. And then the next step after that is seeing if there's any other timing problems. So this is great though, because I wasn't even sure if we were going to get to this point today even, much less during this stream, and we got here during this stream. So we are able to play through the level or run the debug things through all the levels without tripping any of these asserts that I added in today, and without crashing, and without infinite looping. That's great. That's a real milestone in terms of this new movement system. And not only all those things that I just said, but 277 levels pass tests with the new replacement move system, which is great. That's great. So yeah, next up, making undo work. I could show you, like, if I go to heroes 1-1 and I push this block around, right? So I'm going to hit undo. Oh, I guess it works for basic stuff like this. Oh, what it's not going to work for is anything with timed elements, right? So if I go to like skipping stones, this is taking a while to load me because of all our assertion checks. Like we should have all the textures already. Oh, we don't have a test for skipping stones, so we never ran it. I think this is a thing that doesn't like our save game. Okay, here's another thing to look up. More than 10 move transactions are active. The system is probably not working. We're going to want to break on that. That's actually going to be our next thing. Not today. We're going to end the stream soon, but more than 10. This is just a safety thing that I put in, and we're going to look into that. And if we manage to solve that quickly, we'll make undo saves transactions. I'm not going to worry about the skipping stone thing because there were some save game problems that I fixed and edited in a different version of the game that is not this one, but I don't want to update and pull those down right now because we'll randomize the thing that we're working on, which is not great. So we're going to call this the end of the stream for now. And I can go out, take a little break, and get some food, and maybe we'll stream again tonight. There's so many people watching. Is Abner's stream still up? Should we host him, or is that down now because they're on demo time? I see. I guess I don't. I guess I don't know the name of his stream. Someone link it. It's down. Okay. Well, if I go to science and technology, there's someone doing a shooting game in German. I don't know. It doesn't look like he's programming, though. Chemistry experiment making purple smoke. That sounds entertaining. It doesn't look like a lot of making of purple smoke is happening right this second. You know what? I'm not going to worry about it. I didn't see anything to host right away, so we're not going to. thanks everybody for coming by. We'll see if we do another stream later today. We're making progress, so I'm definitely motivated to do another stream later today. We'll just see how I feel after I get some food in me, basically is what's going on. All right, thanks everybody, and I'll see you later.